What's going on, guys? It's your big bro Nate. Just want to make another video here, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. Just want to give you a little heads up. So on this channel we do talk about pretty much everything in life. So we talk about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. Today's video is actually going to be about creatine. All right, so it's going to go into the physical. So with creatine, guys, I stopped using it because it worked so well, and here's why. Okay, you might be going, why would you stop using something that worked really, really well for you? Here's why, guys. Creatine is awesome. Don't get me wrong, okay? But let's talk about what it is first, okay? There's a lot of different things out there. There's a lot of different people who say a lot of different things about creatine, okay? When it comes down to it, you can boil down creatine. It's a performance enhancing supplement, okay? It's not a steroid. It's not going to get you jacked. It's not going to be like taking testosterone. It's not going to be like taking human growth hormone or actual steroids, okay? SARMs or anything like that. It's not going to be in that category, okay? So get that out of your head. The thing about creatine is it's one of the most studied supplements out there, okay? So you have pretty much decades of research going into why creatine is safe, why it's effective, how it can help you build muscle, how it can help you to gain weight. We'll talk about that in a little bit, good kind of weight. And then really there's even more studies coming out talking about even like cognitive, so mental benefits, right? It can help you be a little bit sharper, or can help you, some people they say it helps with depression and things like that. So creatine, guys, it's great. And I'll tell you my experience with creatine, okay? So right now I'm 27. I first started taking creatine right around 17, 18. I tried it for a little bit before I joined the military. I was kind of an idiot with it because, well, at least back in the day, so creatine was one of those supplements that, you know, with time people find out that it's better to do things a certain way. But back in the day, creatine was one of those supplements where they recommended that you load it up like as soon as possible, that you just load it up. And I remember like the first 3 days or the first week, it said to take like 3 or 4 scoops a day, which was like 15 to 20 grams of creatine. So that was to get your body saturated with it. That was to, you know, it was the loading phase, as they say. So I was loading up on creatine. I was drinking a bunch of water. Now, the issue with that, one, it really screwed up my stomach. Like, you gotta be careful with creatine. Some people, it kind of messes up their stomach. I know there's like micronized creatine, which is better, but that can still upset people's stomachs. There's some new creatine coming out. We'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, guys, basically for that first week I was taking it. I felt kind of bloated, but I was drinking a ton of water. And eventually I just started taking like 1 scoop a day. So I followed the directions and I did it. Now, for me, what I experienced was pretty neat, okay? Now, first I'm gonna talk about the pros, and then I'm gonna get into the cons and why I don't use it anymore, okay? So back when I was about 18, I was only about I was still about 6'2", but I was weighing in at like 165, 170, maybe 175. I was pretty skinny. Long story short, I grew up as kind of a short, chubby kid. Around 12, I hit puberty. I just shot up. I got tall, but I was skinny fat. And I dropped a bunch of weight when I was in my mid to late teens, and then over the years, I've just been kind of building slowly. Right now I'm sitting at about 195 to 200, and so that's that. So I gained a little bit of weight. So anytime I take creatine, and you do have to wait, you know, depending on how much you take it, we'll talk about that as well. Depending on how much you take it, you normally, if you're taking like a scoop a day for about a month, that's when you kind of max out. That's just a rough number. Some people say 2 weeks, a month, 3 weeks, whatever. About a month in, you'll notice size. Like, you'll notice that your muscles are fuller. It pulls water into your muscles, and you do gain a little bit of water weight. So anytime I take creatine seriously after I'm loaded up, I normally gain about 5 to 8 pounds, and that's, like I said, just pretty much water weight. And there are studies, there are people that say that you can build muscle. I think creatine is just one of those where, yes, it's going to help you build muscle. It might give a small boost of whatever towards muscle building, but really it's when you start taking creatine, most people are going to end up working out more. So therefore they end up gaining more muscle, and they end up eating better. They end up having a more fit lifestyle. So that's one of the things with creatine. Now, what I also noticed, and this might be a little more important, I noticed for myself, again, everybody's gonna be different with this, but I gained about 10% on my lifts. So for me, for instance, I noticed that my bench, this was, goodness, about 8-9 years ago, I was never really good at bench. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm better with my back. Like, I can pull a lot of weight, I can do pull-ups, but benching is just not my thing. And so my bench, I remember, went up from, I'm trying to remember now, I don't want to screw up the numbers because I know I said 10%, but basically I was at like 170 for my bench for my 1 rep max, and I was able to hop up to like 185 with it. I noticed like I was able to rep out lower weights easier, and it was pretty cool. Like, I was noticeably stronger and my muscles were fuller, and it was cool, right? Especially if you're skinny. Like I said, back in the day I was really skinny, so those extra pounds of like muscle, which was water weight, does help. If you're really lean, it's gonna really help you out. If you're not lean, guys, don't be surprised if that scale goes up. If you're trying to lose weight, I would still take creatine, but just be aware that your weight's probably gonna go up. You might get a little puffier, especially for the guys that aren't so lean. But yeah, I thought it was great, guys. Creatine's super cheap. It's still super cheap. It's one of the cheapest supplements out there. The studies, they show a lot of positive results. People say it works really well. I mean, the pros are all there. I never really noticed any negatives, even though we're about to talk about those. I never personally noticed a whole lot of like negatives from it. The negatives are really just annoyances and preferences, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So yeah, guys, creatine, pretty sweet. I would recommend using it. Those are all the pros that I experienced. Now, the cons, I'm sure you guys are really interested about how cons are, because you want to weigh it. Okay, so I've used creatine. I use creatine pretty consistently. Once I got back from the military, I started working out. I used it, goodness, for, I would say a few years, probably about 5-6 years consistently. I loved it. I thought it was great. Like I said, all the pros. The reasons why I've stopped using it, especially over the last couple years, every now and again, I'll kind of use it for a month or two, maybe 3, and then I'll stop. Really, guys, what it comes down to for me is a few things. So one, you have to drink a ton of water, okay? So if you like drinking a ton of water, this isn't gonna be a big deal. You're just gonna have to drink more. I love drinking water, and I still didn't enjoy how much water I had to drink on when I was using creatine, okay? Especially if you're using a full scoop, you're supposed to use about 5 grams a day. I was able to get away with about half of that. So a little bit more than half of that. So I would end up using around like 3 grams a day. That for me was my sweet spot. I didn't lose any strength or muscle or weight or anything. I was able to maintain it. You have to get to that point, but I was able to like taper down. Some people, they love having a full 5 grams just to cover their bases. But for me, I was able to use less. But even when I was using less, guys, I felt like I was drinking double the amount of water I normally have to drink. For some reason, this is gonna sound crazy, my lips were always dry. I was always using, chapstick and lip balm stuff. Even the lip balm that I always used that was like effective, I know there's chapstick and stuff out there that really messes up your lips, but guys, I was using the same stuff that always worked, but like when I use creatine, my lips are always dry. They always end up cracking and peeling. I'm always drinking a ton of water. I've tried upping salt. I've tried everything. It just sucks in that respect. The other thing, guys, with that in mind is especially if you're in a hotter climate, like I said, that's going to be tough. That's going to be rough, especially I'm in Texas right now. So the summer times are brutal when it comes to hydrating, and you're constantly drinking water, guys. That was one of the things for me. The other one was really the stomach thing. So I prefer to have creatine in the morning. I've done both in the evening. I think, at least for me, doing it in the morning is better, because if I do it at night, for me, one, I don't feel like I sleep as well. I think there is a little bit of a cognitive boost there. But the other thing is, at nighttime, you tend to not drink as much water because you're going to go to bed. You don't just get up and pee every 30 minutes because you're trying to sleep. Plus, you're going to be asleep for, about 8 hours. So you're not really going to be hydrated during that time. So I prefer to do it first thing, like at breakfast. Make sure you get that out of the way. That way you can get most of the creatine into your system. You can hydrate. The other thing was too, guys, a lot of people, there's studies out there, whatever. For me, it was also a matter of, I don't like to eat a whole bunch of carbs. It just doesn't sit well with me and my physiology. So you have to time it kind of around carbs. So if you want to, have lower carbs in the morning and then increase your carbs during the end of the day, that can be a little rougher. I don't think creatine, to me, it's not as effective without carbs. That could just be a placebo thing. I know there's been a couple of things said about that, but the stomach thing, if you fast in the morning too, sometimes I like to just skip breakfast. It's hard to get that creatine in because you're fasting. And if you're out working or whatever during the middle of the day, unless you take the creatine with you, you got to take it at night. And so it's kind of annoying. Creatine, one of the negatives is also, to me, this is something that's not really talked about a whole lot. Even though it is one of the safest supplements out there, there are a couple of safety concerns, okay? One of those is it can affect DHT. Now, DHT is a great hormone. It regulates a lot of things. Don't quote me on this. I can't remember exactly how it works with DHT, but it can affect DHT, which can affect your hair loss. So there have been some studies, there have been some people out there who said that especially if it runs in your family, like male pattern baldness or any sort of balding, that can speed up the process, that can push you in that direction. Some people say, they're full of it, whatever. I personally notice that I lose more hair, like if I'm showering or whatever. I notice more hair loss when I'm on creatine. That's just me. Now, I'm not balding right now, but that's just something to keep in mind, guys. The other thing, this is really rare, but it's just worth throwing out there. Creatine, it can affect people with kidney problems. So again, you should definitely get your blood checked, every 6 months to a year if you can. Check your vitals, make sure everything is good, but it can affect your kidneys. So if you have kidney problems, your kidneys help regulate a lot of your electrolytes and your hydration and everything, and it filters a lot of things like protein. So you don't want to screw that up, guys. You don't want to screw up your kidneys. And also, it does a lot of things with sugar and carbs, so you don't want to put that through a lot of pounding. So if you have kidney problems, any history of it, maybe anything that runs in the family, just be aware of that. That goes, again, hand in hand with the hydration. You got to stay hydrated, or that's going to be tougher on your kidneys, okay? Your kidneys are going to be strained. So just keep that in mind. So guys, the cons, again, for me, were just kind of inconveniences. The other thing too, and this is going to be on a case-by-case basis on what you want to do. I don't like the fact, for me, again, you could be different, that creatine works so well when I use it, But when I stop using it, it just kind of goes away. And again, this isn't to say that creatine is some sort of steroid, but for me, I personally don't really like supplements in the first place because one, you got to keep up with them. Two, you got to make space for them. Three, you got to make sure you take them. Four, you got to make sure you're not overdoing some things and underbalancing the others, right? They have their place. I understand why they're there. I understand that they help people. I understand they have their benefits. That being said, I don't like taking creatine very much now just because when you can't use it for whatever reason, like let's say again, I know it's going to be extreme, but let's say you just find yourself in a situation where you can't use creatine down the road for whatever reason. Again, I can't think of a whole lot of situations this would be the case, but let's say you go on a really long vacation, or you travel the world, or you're not really keeping up with supplements and you're just focusing on other things. Once you stop using it, you'll start to see a lot of those gains, a lot of those things that you gained on creatine go away, which kind of suck because you do notice a pretty big difference when you take it. And once you're off, it's kind of like, why? Like I spend all that time loading up, drinking all this water, doing all this, and then once I stop using it, it takes a few weeks, takes a little bit for your body to like clear all the excess creatine out. But if you eat a lot of red meat, if you're able to afford like eating steaks and stuff like that, steaks have a lot of creatine already. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, probably don't need it. Meat in general, one of the biggest things with creatine is people say that the reason you need creatine is because it's lowered in our food supply over the years. Of course, like that's the argument for almost every supplement out there is, well, our food today doesn't have this much of this nutrient, therefore we need a supplement with this nutrient. We need to make sure that we bring those levels up and, optimization and all this stuff. But the fact that if you stop doing something, the progress or whatever tends to go away. You lose a little bit of the strength. Like I said, about, for me, 10%, or just a rough number. You lose a little bit of that water weight, the fullness of your muscle. To me, I'd rather just gain muscle the old-fashioned way. Just make sure you're eating your food, make sure that you're in the gym, build it slowly over time. But again, that's just me. For me, it's just the minor inconveniences. Also, going back to the stomach thing, I noticed a big difference when I stopped taking it. My stomach chills out a lot. There are some new forms of creatine coming out. I can't remember the exact names of them. It's been a while since I've been in like a supplement shop, but last time I was in, there was a couple forms out there. Supposedly there's some that are coming out that you can just take like one little capsule a day, and it's supposed to be like a super strength creatine, which bypasses your stomach lining and absorbs faster into your bloodstream, which is supposed to help with the stomach upset. I'm always leery of stuff like that. We'll give it time, see if it actually works, see if it's going to be worth it. Like I said, don't really like to take supplements because the other thing too, guys, and this is just my total personal opinion, totally personal. When it comes to supplements, I'm always leery, one, because of the source of the supplementation, and I get there's good brands out there. I've tried several different brands. But I've always noticed that there's a little bit of an inconsistency between certain brands of supplements. Some tend to be better than others. And it always makes me think, like, okay, is this one more pure? Is this one cleaner? And then you start getting into this, like, well, I want to have the cleanest, purest supplement out there, and then you end up spending, 10 times what you would normally spend on a supplement because you want the cleanest, most pure, most certified form of that supplement. So again, if you can afford it, like you can afford top quality supplements, if you can afford to go that route, by all means, do it. But I think that that's one thing to keep in mind. And the last thing I'll say on this, guys, is just going to be when it comes to supplements in general, even creatine is, I know it's one of the most studied supplements, the safest one. We've already talked about the pros and cons, but again, I'm just one of those people where I'm always leery because Normally, when we find out things are really, really good for us, you can look back throughout history, look at a lot of examples. I'm not going to necessarily compare creatine to cigarettes or anything like that, but just to put some perspective out there, seems like a lot of times we tend to, once we find the good in something, especially a supplement, we tend to go all in with it, all right? This goes with like vitamin D3, this goes with like ashwagandha and a lot of these like herbal supplements. For some people, yeah, it works really well to take these supplements. Some people are actually deficient. Some people's physiological makeup does really well on certain supplements. One thing I don't think we talk about though is one, the neutral effects on some people where they don't have anything, right? It's basically just like taking a sugar pill. Or two, some people it's actually negative for, right? Sometimes with some people's genetic makeup and just how their body works, it can actually be more detrimental. And while creatine is one of those where really unless you have kidney problems or you're not staying hydrated, really doesn't pose a threat. I'm always just leery because especially with things like hormones and DHT and the fact that you could accelerate hair loss, and there's always things I don't think people think about long term. I don't know if we've ever studied someone taking creatine for 40-50 years, and we've studied a lot of people doing that. So again, to each their own. It's a supplement. You got to make sure it's clean. You got to make sure the source is good. You got to make sure that it works for you. Got to make sure that you can keep up with it. But guys, that's just life. All right, everyone's going to be different. So if you have any ideas on this, if you have any experiences with it, go ahead and let me know below. If you have any questions about it, again, let me know. Go ahead and drop a like and subscribe, and we'll be back at you with the next one.